You're listening to WMPG 90.9 Gorham, Portland, Southern Maine Community Radio from USM. Live from the Orion Cygnus arm of the Milky Way galaxy, this is Scientifically Speaking, a weekly half-hour program devoted to elegant curiosities, and I am one of your hosts, Sarah Chang, and joining me, as always, is Bernie Rhyme, DJ Starwatcher. How are you, Bernie?
Yes, hi, Sarah. Very good. Thank you.
Bernie's our professor of the Astronomy Lab here at USM and our local protector of the night skies. Reach out to us at WMPG Scientifically Speaking at gmail.com or on Twitter at WMPG SciSpeak. And you can head over to WMPG.org to find the last 5-week archives of all of your favorite shows, including this one. Bernie, could you let our listeners know what is up in the night sky for this coming week?
Okay, certainly. So this will be Friday, July 9th, and we'll have a new moon exactly today at 9:18 p.m. So that's, of course, the type of moon that would cause a solar eclipse, which we had last month. There's not in an eclipse season right now. So new moon, you don't see it for several days each month. You won't be able to see it. And then Mars is still the evening planet. It's in Cancer now. It just passed through the Beehive star cluster a little while ago. And then you can see Venus below that. We're still pretty close to the longest days, which just happened when summer started a few weeks ago. The days are over 15 hours long, and the sun rises at like 5 in the morning. Doesn't set till about 8:30. So, and then Jupiter and Saturn are both up late at night now. They start rising before midnight. So Saturn is about 10 times less bright than Jupiter, and it's coming up first. And then Jupiter is actually going to reach its highest in the sky in like 40 years. And it's about 10 times brighter than Saturn. So by, within just before it gets too bright, when the sun comes up, Jupiter will be pretty high. So those will be two good times to see Jupiter and Saturn, and they're approaching their oppositions next month when they're closest to the Earth and brightest and best for the year. So that's Jupiter and Saturn.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is the second part of our conversation with Bruce Childres. We last did a very thorough audio walkthrough of the Uilleann Bag Pipes and some of the mechanics of Celtic music. But what about the materials, the artistry, the engineering, and the luthierisms, if you will, of bringing these unique instruments to life? Here, only on WMPG 90.9. Enjoy. Let's get into the actual creation of this instrument. When I look at instruments like the clarinet, the oboe, there's a lot of materials. But when I see your bagpipe, there's way more materials than probably any other instrument that I've seen made. A standard guitar is maybe you have different woods, but generally it's wood. You have some plastic pieces, and then you have your metal string. You've got the leather bag. You've got the velvet outer casing of the bag. You've got the wood for your drones and the shanner, and then you've got all these other metal pieces, all these reeds, like all these materials. From your standpoint as a luthier, is there a most important material that you take a lot of care in selecting the right material to create an instrument?
Well, there's a healthy competition going on among the materials. I would say I'm most picky about the bag leather. And I would say that's because, first of all, the Uilleann pipes and several other pipes in the world are dry wind, bellows blown. So you can't introduce moisture into the system. With the Highland pipes, you have various concoctions, liquid concoctions that you can pour into the bag that will make it supple and airtight. You don't have that option with the Uilleann pipes. So you have to find leather that is airtight to begin with. And that's not easy to do because you don't know until you've made a bag out of it. Once you've made a bag out of it and it's porous, you can't send the rest of the leather back because you've already cut into it. I deal with a lot of leather suppliers. And I have one leather supplier who just basically researched and learned what kind of leather dry wind bagpipe makers like. So this guy deserves a halo. So for us, I also have equipment to test the porosity of leather because You can make the best chanter and the best drones and the best reeds, but a leaky system will ruin everything. And it's already enough work without having to gasp for air. And air is a very tiny thing. The wood, of course, is very important. I use primarily Dalbergia melanoxylon, which is a species of tree in Africa that is more commonly known as mbingo or African blackwood. The indigenous people in Africa have taken to calling it the musical tree.
Mm.
It's the same wood that's used in clarinets, oboes, bassoons. Well, not bassoons. You can't get pieces big enough for bassoons. African blackwood is indeed black. It starts out a dark chocolatey brown with black streaks, but oxidization over time, it turns it virtually pitch black. And I've had so many people ask me, is that plastic? You know, because it's so smooth. It finishes smooth. You don't have to put any kind of lacquer or varnish on it. And so African blackwood is the wood of choice for any woodwind, I would say. It's not particularly endangered in Africa, but it's very difficult to harvest and process. And so that is the reason for its expense. It's a very expensive wood.
Mm.
And then the white pieces here, they're called mounts. Traditionally in piping, they were of ivory or bone or other such materials. Today we use this is called cast polyester. And somebody invented some kind of imitation ivory here that I'm looking at that I'm very jealous that somebody discovered a way of making it look like real ivory before I did. But it looks uncannily like it. And I have to be very careful if I fly out of the country to make sure this is certified imitation ivory or they'll confiscate my instrument. And then the rest of the set is also blackwood. This particular set, the metalwork, this is my personal set, the old workhorse. And this particular set is brass with nickel chromium plating, just like you'd see on a car or something like that. And but most times it's just plain brass. And you have to deal with tarnishing and, you know, the staining of brass. Nobody cleans their pipes. They're too afraid of taking them apart to do so. Yeah.
And so, do you make all of these pieces, or are there pieces that you kind of have to custom order or custom request?
The pieces of wood for it are pretty much standard sizes that will do just fine. And the wood suppliers out there know what instruments people are making out of what piece. You know, they're used to, you know, the sizes that clarinet makers like, or the sizes, and they also know what uilleann pipe makers like. And just as a for instance, that cane that I'm telling you about, it looks, you know, like bamboo, and this is split off from the tube. The people that I buy this from, they know exactly what people like me want. They're a company in Spain called Madeir. And so, you know, the leather makers, we kind of had to train them. But the wood suppliers and all of that, they know what we want.
I know.
And there is a process from getting to wood to chanter. And I'll talk about the chanter because it's the most important part. Things are made on a lathe, as you could imagine, standard wood turning lathe. I have 3 lathes. One is for fine turning and rough turning. Another is for boring. And then the third lathe is a machine lathe for turning the metalwork. And the what I do is you get a turning square, which is a piece about 15 inches long and about an inch and a half by an inch and a half, and you turn it to round on the rough turning lathe. And then I take it to the boring lathe, which is anything but boring, and center it on that lathe, and then I have a brace to hold the other end steady and centered. And I go into it with it's literally a gun drill. This is the drills that they use for boring rifles and pistols.
Yeah. Wow.
And it does a very neat job of going just like right straight through it without deviating. And then what I do is expand bits of that bore with concentric sizes of twist drills. So now you have what's called a step bore. It goes like narrow, then a little bit wider, then a little bit wider, and so on to the end. And once I've done that, I have what's called a reamer, which is, it almost looks like a bayonet. It look almost, in fact, there's a theory that in the old days they used French bayonets for this purpose, left over from the Napoleonic Wars. And it's sharpened, it's conical shaped, so it's very thin on one end and goes out to about a half an inch on the other end. And I twist that into the wooden piece to smooth out those steps that I bored last time. So it's a long, smooth, conical bore. And so that is the chanter. And then I have a jig that I stick it into that has all of the tone holes marked, that I can just bring my drill press right down into that jig, and it puts the tone holes where I want them. I still have to do some minor tinkering. There are things, it's not like a guitar where you put on the strings and tune it up. It's a fixed tuning instrument, and the tuning of the Uilleann pipe chanter just came about by a lot of experimentation. There's no set way to calculate, where the finger holes are going to be and the exact bore size. And there's a lot of things that you can do afterward by, for instance, how far you set the reed into it or pull the reed out. That changes the tuning. What we call undercutting, which is the tone hole. You can cut it on the inside of the bore, and that can change the pitch or the character of the note.
Wow.
And then you take it, that blank with all the finger holes drilled and the bores drilled, put it back on the fine turning lathe, and just cut away everything that doesn't look like a chanter.
Everything.
Are you always making the same size bagpipe? Like there's no giant one or like a piccolo one, or they're all relatively the same size?
Okay, that is a good question. That is a very good question. The Uilleann pipes do come in different pitches.
Yeah.
And like I said, this one is a D-pitched chanter, and that's the most common. When you go into a session in a pub or anything like that, everybody's going to be playing in D or G or their relative minors. So this is what you'll find. However, I'm reaching into my pile here. This is a C-pitched chanter. And this one's made of boxwood with
It looks
blackwood
much bigger.
notes. Yes, it is. Here's the D pitch. And then half a step down is the B pitch chanter.
Oh, wow.
These are the most common pitches that you'll find: D, C, and B. There are a few B flats out there which are longer than this one. And also this one's fully keyed, as you can see.
Wow.
And there's also C sharp, and I have heard a few E flat chanters, which are smaller than this. But it's not like, I do have a lot of clients that call me first thing, and they're they're planning to play with the church organist or pianist or something like that, under the illusion that if they get all 5 keys on the chanter, that they'll be able to play in any key they want. Mm-mm. Sorry, it's a folk
Right.
instrument, you know.
Right.
So I suppose you could put the Boehm system on an uilleann pipe chanter, but you know, who'd want to?
So when you were talking about tuning, that's just getting, for example, your D flat, right, is your standard chanter,
The D,
just the D.
just
Um,
D.
when you're talking about tuning, you're literally talking about like tuning the strings on a stringed instrument. Like that's what you mean. You're not actually changing the key because that's kind of set for that for that size.
Yeah, it's not uncommon among folk instruments to be in a set key or, you know, a limited number of keys. Like
Hmm.
the uilleann pipes chanter, whatever key it's built in, and it has to be built in that key. It can't be, you know, there are minimum alterations that you can do
Mm.
to vary beyond that. Um, so the uilleann pipes chanter, all uilleann pipes chanters, and I'll just use D as a reference. We'll play D and G, E minor, A minor, and in a limited way, A,
Mm.
A major. And that's just about it now. There are a few talented uilleann pipers out there that can do a few more. I don't know how they do it. But if you want to play, let's say, for instance, that fellow who played, you know, the Queen of Sheba um, by Handel, he just transposed it to whatever key his uilleann pipes play in, which was D. You know. So if you play with an organist or a piano player, then they have to
They
transpose,
gotta
you
change their
know, to
key.
you. Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I can only play in the key of D.
Yeah, and it's hard to get that across to folks sometimes because really you know, it's deceptively sophisticated instrument. It's really a folk instrument, you know,
Yeah.
the uilleann pipes. They're just the most sophisticated of their type.
No, I mean, I think, getting it across to people, that audience would also be me because, I know that, for example, harmonicas, they are also a set key. I know there are chromatic ones. I have no idea how that works, but I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, why can't you just change the key? Uh,
Uh, a chromatic harmonica has 2 rows of reeds
mm,
that are blocked off. It blocks off 1 row, and you push a button, and it blocks off the other row. And the first row is the key of C. Think of a piano. And the second row is all of the flat is like C sharp, I think. So the black keys in the second row and the white keys on the first row.
oh, I learned something. I didn't even bothered looking it up.
Chromatic harmonica.
It makes the piano so easy. It seems so easy. All of
Yeah.
these kind of wind instruments.
Yeah. Well, you know, we also have to concern ourselves with temperament. The uilleann pipes and most bagpipes are what's called just tempered. In other words, they're mathematically equal, or not equal, but mathematically just, mathematically harmonic.
Mm.
If you tried to equal temper an uilleann pipe chanter, it would sound horrible against the drones. But you equal temper a piano so that you sound good enough in every key, in all 12 keys.
Mm.
So you don't have to worry about equal temperament when you're playing the uilleann pipes, when you're making them.
So, when you mentioned that for your key of D pipes,
Hmm.
you start with a 15-inch block of wood, or
Oh, no. The B pitch chanter, I start with an 18-inch block
oh,
of.
okay. So that length is set for kind of every single key. They would have their specific length.
Yeah,
Is that
right.
something that kind of
And it doesn't
you
change.
had to toy with, or you just know that from?
It's a lot easier to stand on the shoulders of those gone before. And we have, I mean, I have a drawer full of drawings and sketches and what have you. When I was first starting out, I would go to, we have gatherings of pipers, which are actually mostly Irish, all Irish music instruments, called chinnels. Chinnel is the Irish word for gathering or company. And I used to go to chinnels and carry around calipers in my pocket and a pad and paper and everything. And it's a lot like dating. You know, you go to a bar, you ask 10 women, and one of them will say yes. So I asked 10 pipers if I could measure their pipes, and one of them would say yes. So, a lot of people don't like you walking up to their prize
Sure.
chanter with the calipers, So I did a lot of that, and I collected drawings, and there are quite a few drawings out there that can put you on your way. But I've talked with a lot of aspiring pipe makers, and I will always advise them that you are going to put your own nuance into it. If you copy, letter for letter, a Childres chanter, eventually it won't be a Childres chanter once you get through with it,
Yeah. How much wiggle room do you have?
Not much at all. I have, sets of reamers and drill bits, and they're all permanently marked. And that permanent mark says, stop. So it's a little difficult because wood and cane are almost still alive after you've worked it into something. And for instance, what I do is after each step, after I've put a bore into a piece of wood and drilled the finger holes, I try to set it aside at least 3 months, if not longer, if I can. Because each time you work a piece of wood, you're opening up parts of the wood that have never been exposed to the air before. And so, and wood moves. Black wood is prized because it's very stable, but it's still wood, and it'll still move. And I showed you the boxwood chanter. And boxwood used to be the wood for woodwind instruments in Europe until trade with Eastern and Southern continents developed in, the ebony trade and the African blackwood trade. So this is what they used in Europe. And you can see a lot of early music bands that their flutes and their clarinets and stuff will be made of this rather than blackwood. Boxwood is notoriously unstable. I've made pieces out of boxwood that a year later it would look like a banana.
Oh.
It was just, yeah.
Besides kind of the stability of the wood, is there a tone that comes from the black wood that makes it that much better? Or I'm sure that all woods will sound different.
Yes, it is critical. Density. Density. The denser the wood. It's not like the wood on a violin or a guitar. The guitar, for instance, uses hardwoods for the back and sides of the guitar, but it uses a softwood for the face of the guitar because that's the part of the guitar that has to move and amplifies the sound. And then the back and sides sort of reflect that back out. But with the woodwinds, you're handcuffing an air column is what you're trying to do, So the less the wood moves, actually, the better. So we use the densest woods we possibly can. Some wonderful, wonderful Highland pipes, the Scottish variety of the bagpipes, are being made out of polypinco and Delrin plastic. And it works just fine for it.
Yeah. Are those especially dense plastics?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And they also come in black.
So, from a physics perspective, if we're talking about sound waves, I know you were kind of describing guitar as an example. It's like you're trying to keep the sound waves in and out.
Right.
And then for the pipes, you're just trying to keep them kind of within the walls of the pipes to kind of resonate within the pipe.
Right, right. If that's exactly correct. If the wood moves, you get a brighter sound. Like softer woods will give you a brighter sort of amplified tone, but it decreases in control.
Mm.
Like for instance, I do use a variety of woods. I also use cocobolo, boxwood, several others that have varying densities. And I like, I prefer African blackwood
Mm.
over all of them. And I don't like to use cocobolo because it's becoming endangered.
Mm.
And but really, it's all in the reed,
Mm.
and all in the ability to control air pressure.
Mm.
So um, we, in the Irish music community, in the Uilleann Pipes community, we call our chanters sticks. Hey, that's a nice stick. You know? And I'm of the opinion that any stick can be made to play
Mm.
and sound pretty good, you know. And there's a lot of things we do, like sometimes we do a little bit of tuning by sticking things up the bore in
Yeah.
certain places. And there's a lot of freedom I mean, you don't have much margin on either side, but there's a lot of freedom in how to do it. You'll see chanters all the time with little bits of tape, uh, black tape on the tone holes covering up part of it. You know,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
so it's crude.
But it's clearly an art that requires a lot of skill and experience.
Yes, yes. I've been doing it full time since '96, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm still learning as I go. And there, something new comes up. Every time that most of the time when something new comes up, I'm like, I wish I had done that 25 years ago. And uh, I tell my clients, if they say something like, "I want the best instrument you can possibly make," then I say, "Well, okay, come back in 10 years, it'll be perfect." you know?
Have you made anything more experimental?
Hmm, that's a really good question. I haven't done much experimental with it. Now, I have made um, like sometimes you'll have more than three regulators
Mm.
on a set of pipes, and I have had a couple of people ask for that extra regulator. One of them was a whole regulator with one key on it so that it would play an E note. The E is not available on the standard three set
Yeah.
regulators. So this guy, uh, you know, uh, cheerfully paid me for one note.
Where can folks find out more about you and your bagpipes?
I have a website that is in dire need of updating, but you can go look at it anyway. All one word, bcpipes.com.
Great. So listeners can go to bcpipes.com to find out more about you and the work that you do. Thank you so much, Bruce, for joining and sharing all about bagpipes and the art of making
Oh, it was a
bagpipes.
lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Just interesting. There's almost so much more to anything that you create that way, and the fact that you can play them and you're a good musician too. I mean, that certainly helps. I'm sure a lot of the makers also play them. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I pride myself more on making the instrument, but if you want to see some playing, there's people like Patty Keenan, the Rossum family. Patty Maloney is still active with the Chieftains. Like I said, type it into YouTube and wonderful stuff will come up.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce.
You're welcome, Sarah, and thank you, Bernie.
Yeah. Thanks, Bruce.
And when I come up with some new instrument, I'll let you know, and we'll do this again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Scientifically Speaking here on WMPG with myself, Bernie, and Bruce Childres. Stay tuned to keep jamming with your favorite DJs on WMPG 90.9. And from your favorite nerds, mask up, and we wish you healthy bodies and clean air.